was just talking about right now. And we cannot correct that problem in 4th grade. You can't even correct it in 3rd grade. You gotta be there when those little kiddos are 3 and 4 years old so that they are socializing and learning and connecting and being ready to read just like kids in other parts of the country are doing. Those same kids who are eating our lunch right now because we have failed to invest in public ed. So here's an idea. All day pre-K for every child, regardless of your income or your zip code, learning to read at the right age so that when you get to 3rd grade and 4th grade, you're just as competitive as any other kid. And then an even better idea, paying the school teachers in the state of Texas what they're really worth so that none of them are working a 2nd or a 3rd job either. Treating them with the respect that they are owed because of the professionals that they are. And when I say teachers, I really mean all public educators. I mean the librarian, I mean the speech language pathologist, right. I mean everybody who makes public education possible in our schools. Now, right now, they are coming out of 2 years of pandemic, maybe a year or more of distance learning. And our young guy was in 3rd grade when the pandemic started, and I watched his public school teacher try to corral him and all of his classmates on these Zoom calls, which is an exercise in futility and frustration for that teacher. But he never gave up on those kids, even those kids who couldn't get an internet connection and had a hard time getting online in the first place. That guy's not just there, that teacher, for the instructional learning in the classroom, although that's important. It's also making sure that those kids are literally connected and keeping them alive after 2 years of some of the greatest stress any kid can go through. We lost 80,000 people in this state from this pandemic. So a lot of those kids lost their grandparents. A lot of their parents lost their jobs. A lot of those kids lost the homes that they used to be able to depend upon. That teacher is there literally as a lifeline. And for those of you who are educators or family members of educators, you know that even if that teacher's working a 2nd or a 3rd job, out of her own pocket, she is likely to pay for the school supplies for the kid who showed up, who didn't have his notebook or pencils, or that one kid who shows up in the same pair of dirty jeans every single day, every single week. Out of her own pocket, she buys a new set of clothes so he can hold his head high, have the pride necessary to be able to learn right alongside those other kids. These are the people who are leaving the profession by the thousands across the state of Texas right now. 1/3 of all new teachers leave teaching in Texas within the first 5 years that they are brought on. When I'm governor, I'm going to make sure that we listen to these teachers, that we pay them enough, that we respond to their requests, like this year canceling the STAR test so we don't have any more high stakes, high pressure in the lives of kids who already have too much high pressure and high stakes going on already, and then follow their lead on standardized testing going forward. Have something that's not punitive in nature, that doesn't define that teacher's prospects, that doesn't measure the potential of that kid in front of them. Instead, use it as a diagnostic to get resources to where they need to be, or to find out who's doing the greatest job and replicate that over other counties and school districts along the way. If we focus on it and make it a priority, we will have the best public schools in the country, bar none. And everything else afterwards becomes possible. So those 3 ideas: expanding Medicaid so you can see a doctor, making sure that we have great jobs in this state, that people can work and not have to find other employment to supplement their job, and then ensuring that we have the best public schools, jobs, being able to see a doctor, and great schools. That's what we are about. And we may be Republicans, we may be Democrats, we may be independents, we may have never voted in an election before, but I think those ideas are the kinds of ideas that we can get around right now. And if you are frustrated and maybe even tempted to turn cynical about politics and whether this great democracy even works anymore and can function and get the big things done, then I want you to be part of this campaign. And I want you to share with your neighbors. And they may say, look, this is Vernon, Texas. Democrats typically don't do well in Vernon, Texas. Or this is a rural community relative to El Paso, where Beto's from, or Dallas, where he was 2 days ago. This isn't the kind of thing that we're into here. Let's find those pieces of common ground, jobs, schools, the ability to see a doctor, that will allow us to start talking to and trusting and working with one another again. we can get those things done. And when we do, other things, even more ambitious goals, become possible going forward. This is the greatest test we've ever been under as a democracy. It's never been under greater attack, literally through violence and intimidation and suppression here in the state of Texas. And then so many of us, probably myself included, right? Finding our own information silos online or on cable TV, or the people that we talk to and listen to who reinforce our own ideas. What if this campaign could break down those barriers? And those who become volunteers in this campaign, knocking on the doors of their neighbors and say, listen, I could care less who you voted for in the last election. I'm going to be focused on the future with you. And if you want to be part of better jobs, great schools, and being able to see a doctor, this is the campaign, this is the candidate for you. And we want you to join and be part of it. And then we can get past the cruelty and the incompetence and so much of the corruption that we see in our government right now. And bring the people who, in my definition of democracy, are the government, back in to the seat of power in the state of Texas. We do that, and there is no stopping us. And we get past not being able to keep the lights on when the temperature drops in the state of Texas. We get past the pursuit, one of the most cruel things I can imagine, of transgender kids and their families trying to scare you about what bathroom that kid is going to go to or what sport they're going to play. We've got 30,000 kids in Child Protective Services in the foster care system in the state of Texas. 23 of them have died in our custody and care in the last 2 years. 200 plus have been trafficked for their bodies while they were in state care. I mean, if we want to do something about children who are endangered, I'd start there within that system and make sure that we have the investment to bring those kids through okay. We can get past pitting us against one another and trying to make us afraid of the other, and remind ourselves that we have more in common than we do that separates us or would otherwise divide us. That's what I want this campaign to be about. That's what I want to do for you as the next governor of this state. But the only way that I'm going to be able to perform to your expectation, the only way that I'll be able to deliver you and effectively serve the people who are in this room, is to listen to you first. So I've said my piece. You know, what motivates me to do this, what I think we can accomplish, what I know it's going to take from all of us to make it happen, which is volunteering in this campaign and talking to our neighbors. Cynthia Cano, who's right here, has a microphone. If you want to raise your hand, she'll bring it to you. I'm all ears to hear what's on your mind, what you want to say, any question you want to ask. I'll do my best to answer. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. First, thank you for your tenure as a representative of the state in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Okay, now, this is what I'm bringing, just a question. This is not a challenging question. I'm not here to be a troll. I want to ask where those revenues to fund not just the schools, but also the teachers, that means you have to have a revenue that's going to be there for 100 years. We've had a very difficult time, like with the Robin Hood bill, okay, trying to pay for things. We've increased our cigarette taxes like crazy, and I'm all for that. Those revenues that are being used to fund those ideals you're talking about, school supplies and teachers' pay, teacher retention, and that foster care and education is going to be inevitably tied to it. Okay, so
how do we pay for all this, right?
How do we pay for it?
Yeah, great question. That's the right question to be asking too, because it's not enough for us to say we're going to do this or make this commitment right here during a campaign. But when I come back here, and I will as your governor, and ask you to hold me accountable in a town hall meeting just like this, I want to be able to tell you that I've delivered, and I want to be able to show you how. So to pay for this, it's simply a matter of priorities in the state of Texas. The current governor has committed $3 billion of your money and my money to the border. He's activated 10,000 members of the Guard, deployed them there for 1 year, taken them from Vernon in El Paso, from their families, from their careers, from their kids, with 10 days notice to be part of a solution in search of a problem. They're not able to make apprehensions, they're not able to make arrests. 4 of them, unfortunately, have taken their lives so far in the last 5 months, 2 more have died in accidents. None of them have been harmed by those coming into this country. And while we have some real challenges at the border, and I know we got to meet them, this is a really expensive way to provide some political window dressing on it. So what about bringing that money into our school districts, for example, and paying for those teachers? Here's another idea. There is $5 billion annually lost to the unfair way we collect property taxes. Homeowners, renters, that probably describes everybody here in this room, rarely, if ever, contest the valuation on their property, what it is appraised at. And we just go ahead and pay the property tax based on that appraisal. Corporations, the folks who can spend millions of dollars to lobby the governor and the state legislature, to hire the attorneys to contest their valuation, they're able to artificially depress the price of their property or its value and pay hundreds of millions, ultimately billions of dollars less in property taxes. You and I, the local property taxpayer who funds our schools, end up footing the bill and making up the difference. We could reform that and bring in $5 billion additional a year. And then there's this idea. Not everyone's going to be down for it, and I understand it. We all have different views on the matter. But I strongly believe we should not be locking people up for possession of a substance that is legal in most of the rest of the country right now. So when we legalize marijuana, we are going to save $500 million a year on interdiction, enforcement, and incarceration costs, and conservatively estimated receive $500 million in taxes paid, just the way it's taxed in almost every other state that's legal. That's $1 billion net to the positive. So $3 billion from this border operation, Operation Lone Star, $5 billion in unfair valuation exemptions from corporations, another $1 billion from taxing marijuana and not putting people behind bars for possession of that substance. We're starting to work with some real money right here, right? And that we can invest in our school districts, in child protective services, and other real priorities that we have that match those 3 goals of better jobs, great schools, and being able to see a doctor. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate it.
Yes. My name is Mike. I'd like to address the problem of street people. We have all these homeless people throughout Texas. You can't really tell in Vernon, but in all the big cities, it's huge. It's a huge problem. All around the capital of Texas, there's homeless people everywhere, all around Abbott's house, and he's not doing nothing to help any of them. And we need to start helping our own citizen homeless people. And I was wondering what you were going to do about that.
Thanks for asking this question. I think it's connected to everything that we're talking about right now. We were just asked about how we're going to fund some of this stuff. Tom at the beginning mentioned taking Medicaid expansion. That's another $10 billion a year that comes in that helps connect people with mental health care, for example. We know a lot of folks, because no one chooses to be homeless, right? But a lot of folks who are on the street are unable to afford mental health care. And very often they end up treating it themselves, sometimes buying drugs on the street, become addicted to those drugs, and are just in this vicious cycle that they cannot get out of. Others are literally working and don't make enough to put a roof over their head. We were at one of these homeless encampments in Austin a few weeks ago, and I was talking to a young family. The daughter of that family works at a Whataburger. The dad works at a home construction company. They combined do not have enough to pay the rent on an apartment in that city. So increasing wages, making sure that we have more union jobs where you're able to earn while you learn and command a higher salary, that begins to address it. Access to healthcare is a huge deal. And then we've got to be able to invest in affordable housing in these communities. We're pushing people out of Austin and Dallas and Houston, Texas, whose families have been there for generations but are getting priced out of their neighborhoods. We've got to be able to intervene in some meaningful way to ensure that they can stay there. You were going to ask another question.
Yes, it's about the same thing. See, you got your people on disability and your vets, and they can't make enough Social Security. Old people, they don't make enough money to afford the rent in any of those cities. And that's a huge population of the city, of the place, everywhere.
That's right. And just one part of that population that you mentioned, veterans. So the women and men who put their lives on the line for this country and have earned not just access to the VA for health care, but the ability to have a home that they can go to every single day. At the end of the day, we've got to make sure that we get to zero for that population within Texas in terms of homelessness for veterans. Some cities in America have gotten to what they call functional zero for veterans homelessness. Let's make Texas the leader in that. We have more military installations, more people who've served this country, more people who've retired from the military or have transitioned into life as a veteran. Let's make sure that we're doing right by them, given the fact that they did right by us when they were in uniform. That's a great place for us to start. I appreciate you mentioning that.
All right, here we go.
Thank
Here's
you.
our next question.
Well, mine is actually more of a statement than a question, and it kind of piggybacks on what he was saying. But I think that the statistic is 21.6% of people in Vernon, Texas, live in poverty, and most of those being single mothers. Is there any kind of all of this kind of incorporates back to what you're saying with the health care and raising the minimum wages and everything like that. But I just really wanted to make that statement that piggybacked on that. It's a whole 21% of us are under the poverty levels.
Thanks for bringing that up. I mentioned all-day pre-K earlier.
Yeah.
Not only is that great for children's ability to learn and to read at the same rate that kids are reading in other places, but it also frees up their parents and their mothers, in this case, to be able to finish their education or to work or to earn more. We lose $9 billion a year from people who are unable to afford childcare and therefore unable to leave the home and go do more with their lives that they really want to be able to do if they only had the resources to be able to do it. Another one, and it's embarrassing to me as an American that I have to say this out loud, but women are paid a fraction of what men are paid for doing the same work and providing the same value. As governor, I can make that a priority and certainly ensure that anyone who's contracting with the state or benefits from anything that the state of Texas is doing pays the women on their payroll what men are making for doing that same work and providing that same value and that same work. That's another thing that we can do. Raising the minimum wage so that no one is working at $7.25, no one's being taken advantage of in that same way. And then I mentioned unions a couple of times because there are folks who at the age of 18 may want to and have the ability to go to college. There are some who may have the ability and don't want to do that and want to learn a trade right away and be able to earn while they're learning. I want to make sure that there are more union job opportunities here. And listen, it's about wages, it's about workplace safety, it's about the conditions under which we operate, but it's also about the fulfillment and function you get when you've been able to learn that trade and being so competitive that you can work that anywhere you want to in this country and in this state. I've seen too many communities, my own included, where we have contracts come in, great job opportunities, and we don't have the workforce that can compete for them. Unions help us to get there. And so I want to make that case that it's not just good for unions and union members, it's good for all of us in our communities when we make that happen. So thank you for raising that. Those are 3 ideas, and then I'd love to hear more from you. And I'll make sure as we stay afterwards, if you have other ideas on how we improve opportunities in Vernon, that I'm able to learn from you. So thanks for coming out today.
All right,
Appreciate
we're
it.
in the back over here.
Thanks, Ms. Conley.
Hey, Beto, I just want to say again, thank you for coming. We don't get like-minded folks in this part of the country much. Appreciate you very much, but I guess I'm wondering if you can, is there anything you can say about the redistricting and voter suppression that would make me feel better?
Yeah, it's tough to feel good about this one, right? Because it's as bad as it gets here in Texas. This state has tried harder than any other to keep more people from exercising their right to vote. You know, when you see us ranked 50th in the country on voter turnout, we moved all the way up last election to 46th in the country. It's not because we're lazy or that we lack any love for democracy. It is that, to your point, we're literally drawn that way. Uncompetitive congressional districts that allow members of Congress to choose their voters instead of the other way around, that completely ignore that 90% of the growth of this state over the last decade came from communities of color. And yet communities of color gained no new districts in the redistricting and the apportionment of an additional congressional district based on this population growth. When you see people lined up outside of Texas Southern University in Houston, Texas, 6 hours deep, trying to vote on election day, you know, on the one hand, you're impressed and you say, man, I don't know if I could wait 6 hours. That person's a real champion. And then you're very quickly embarrassed that we put anybody through a 6-hour line, because we also recognize there are folks who are working those 2 or 3 jobs who can't afford to wait 6 hours, who are taking care of kids or parents and can't do that. And the reason that line is so long in that community is that Texas has closed more than 700 polling places over the last 10 years, concentrated in the fastest growing black and brown neighborhoods in this state. There is no accident where this is happening and to whom it is happening in the state of Texas. But your question is, what the hell are we going to do about this? And is there anything hopeful that you can tell me? I wish the Department of Justice would intervene and enforce the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But as obvious as that is to all of us, for some reason, they're not going to do it. I'm not going to hold my breath. In other words, there is no cavalry coming to our rescue right now. This one is all on us. The good news, finally, to get to your question, is that we have signed up 56,000 people and counting so far to volunteer for this campaign. Over the month of February alone, leading up to the primary election, we knocked on or called or texted 4.5 million voters, person to person, individual connections, to one, make sure they know how to vote as the rules of the road have been changed by the current governor trying to stay in power, and two, give them a reason to vote and not assume anything about anyone. And we started those conversations in February. We're going to keep them going through March and the following 7 months, all the way until November 8th. We, the people of Texas, are going to overcome the voter suppression that's in this state. It's why one of the things I hope you leave this meeting with is a commitment to be a volunteer on this campaign. I need you. We need each other right now. The only way we're going to come through this is by signing up and doing the work. We cannot sit on the sidelines. They don't exist in a democracy, at least if we're all doing what we should be doing and doing our part. So you are part of the answer to your own question. You are going to help me overcome this if you're willing to knock on doors with us. So thank you for being here. And in advance, thank you for saying yes. Appreciate it.
All right, this is our last question.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Hi, thank you for coming. Just a question. What we see when we define people, and you are going to face this issue, we've already faced it twice before, you will be categorized as a Marxist, liberal, leftist, whatever else they put thrown on you. How do we fight that? How do we get the truth out there, rather than categorize somebody as just inadequate because we consider themselves to be Marxist?
Yeah, great question. First part of the answer is again, let's stay on the positive. We're about jobs, we're about being able to see a doctor, we're about great schools and get behind our public school teachers. But inevitably, to the gentleman's point, we're going to be attacked and we're going to be smeared and we're going to be maligned and they're going to lie about us. They're going to say, this guy is a socialist. He wants to turn Texas into Venezuela. There are 2 people running for governor right now. That's O'Rourke, that's me, and Greg Abbott, that's the other guy. Only one of us has started a small business and hired people in his community and met a payroll every single week for 15 years. I'm really proud of the fact that I got to be part of that. In the definition I know of capitalism, that's the picture right there. This guy has been on the public payroll, nothing wrong with that, but if there's someone who knows what capitalism is and understands the power of the market and creating jobs and how critical those jobs are to communities like Vernon, like my hometown of El Paso, I'm the guy. So share with people, he's a small business owner, just like the owners of this outfit right here. He knows what it's like to struggle, he knows what it's like to succeed, and he's going to be there for other job creators in this state. When they try to attack us on oil and gas, this guy wants to get rid of all the oil and gas jobs. That's something else we've heard. Nothing could be further from the truth. I drove here in an automobile that burns gasoline, and I want to make sure that the energy that we need to be independent from the rest of the world, because I do not want your sons or daughters or grandsons and granddaughters to be fighting wars in the Middle East to secure our supply lines for energy here. I'm proud that the state of Texas has secured that independence. And those are the very oil and gas workers that we're talking about. Let's protect their jobs, but then let's expand upon that. more wind, more solar, more geothermal, more hydrogen. So not a replacement or a transition, but an expansion. That's more jobs, and they're higher value, higher wage jobs than we are typically creating in the state of Texas right now. So we can do more and we can do better. And on any of these other extreme positions that they're going to try to tag us with, let's just come back to this basic premise that we're not going to be motivated by fear or tearing one another down. We're going to be motivated by how we can come together, how we can unite, and how we can do the great things. But I want you to be rest assured that when I am attacked, and when I'm attacked by Greg Abbott, my best defense is going to be a very vigorous and strong offense. We're going to make sure this guy's on the back foot and on the ropes every single day of this campaign. So we're not going to take it. Thank you for asking the question. Are we staying here? So Cynthia says that was the last question, but I'm going to hang out here in front of this great flag, and anyone who would like to take a picture, post that on their social media platform of choice. It's really going to help us get the word out in Vernon, and to your friends and family and your contacts on social media who live in other communities. So if you have an extra second, come by, take a picture, let's post it, and then we would love to see you again in the near future. Thank you for coming out here today. We're very grateful. That's it.
Absolutely great. Jackson was just promoted major and took over command of the striker division. And Justin is corporal in helicopter. Sorry. Oh.